The church was full. I don't think I'd seen that many people gathered in one place since Ethan's wedding. There were flowers everywhere, dozens of white arrangements lined up near the altar. Rachel had insisted on a formal ceremony. She wanted people to know Robert had left behind a legacy. That word again, legacy. I sat in the second row, alone, even though the front pew had 3 empty seats. Ethan gave me a look when I first arrived, like he hadn't expected me to show up. Rachel pretended not to see me at all. The service began with the usual hymns. The pastor spoke about Robert like he had been some kind of saint. A man who served his community, loved his family, left behind a strong son to carry on his name. I stayed quiet. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I had spent 43 years married to that man. I knew the version they were talking about wasn't the whole picture. Then came the moment for family members to speak. I stood up, gently. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. My knees ached, and my back wasn't what it used to be, but I made my way toward the podium slowly. Before I even reached the aisle, Ethan stood. He cut right in front of me, straight to the microphone. "There's no need," he said loudly, turning toward the audience. "Mom has said her goodbyes. Now it's my turn." I froze in place, just a few feet from the podium. People looked at me, waiting to see what I'd do. I didn't move. I just sat back down slowly. My face was warm, and I could feel a tightness growing in my throat. Ethan straightened his suit and cleared his throat. "My father was a man of honor," he began. "He believed in hard work, in providing for his family, and in putting legacy above everything." His eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. "Unfortunately," he continued, "not everyone in the family respected those values. Some only cared about money, about what they could take, not what they gave." My chest went tight. He didn't look away. "So let me be clear today. For everyone here, some people, even those who shared his last name, are no longer part of this family. Greed has a price, and in this case it cost them their place." Rachel reached for his arm as he finished. He smiled softly and took her hand. Some guests clapped. Not all, just a few, but enough to make me feel like I was shrinking into the floor. I didn't react. I didn't interrupt. I waited. When he was done, the pastor gave a final prayer. People started getting up, heading to the burial site or out to the reception area. Ethan and Rachel were already busy receiving condolences and nodding to family friends. I walked slowly toward the front of the church. A few people noticed me. A few moved aside. Thomas, Robert's lawyer, was gathering papers at the side. I tapped his shoulder lightly. "Mrs. Lattimore," he said, clearly surprised. I didn't speak. I opened my purse and handed him the envelope. Inside was the final, legally signed and notarized version of Robert's will. The one Ethan had never seen. The one I found hidden inside a manila folder in the drawer Robert had kept locked until the day he collapsed. He had updated it 6 weeks before his stroke, and Rachel had done everything she could to pretend it didn't exist. Thomas opened the envelope, read the first page, and froze. His eyes jumped from the document to my face. I just nodded. "Is this?" he began. "It's the last one," I said quietly, "and it's valid." He looked over the seal, the witness signatures, the notary stamp. "I'll need to—" "I know," I said. "Take your time." He excused himself from the crowd and walked away, already pulling out his phone. I didn't stay for the burial. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked outside, stepped into the parking lot, and sat inside my car with the door still open. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from how quiet I had stayed. Because the truth was, I could have spoken that day. I could have defended myself, but I didn't need to. Robert had written everything down. He left Ethan something. He wasn't cruel, but he hadn't left him the house. He hadn't left him full control of the business assets or the family trust. Those were left to me. Robert may not have been a perfect husband. He was cold, controlling. But toward the end, I think he knew what he had done to me. How he let Ethan treat me. How Rachel would smile to my face and then lie behind closed doors. I didn't expect to win anything. I hadn't even planned on showing the will. But when Ethan said those words, "You're no longer family," I knew he had made his choice. He wanted to erase me. He didn't know Robert had changed his mind. And now, it was too late to undo it. I drove home slowly, past the bakery where I used to buy Ethan cookies when he was a boy, past the old middle school where I went to every parent meeting alone while Robert stayed at work. I pulled into my driveway. The house looked smaller than I remembered, cold and distant. Rachel had already started redecorating before Robert passed. The new kitchen cabinets were white, sterile, like a dentist's office. I left the car running for a moment, staring at the front door. Then I turned the engine off and stayed where I was, holding the steering wheel. They thought I wouldn't fight back, that I'd just accept it, that I'd disappear quietly. But that's not who I am anymore. And they're about to find out just how much they never knew me. The next morning, I woke up before the sun came up. I didn't sleep much. I kept hearing Ethan's voice in my head, saying, "You're no longer family." It didn't matter how many times I told myself it was just words. It still felt like a punch to the chest. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was louder than usual. My eyes kept drifting to the empty spot where Robert's jacket used to hang, to the small dent in the floor where he dropped his cane every evening. I didn't miss him, not in the way people think. I missed the version of him I had hoped he would become. By 9 a.m., I got a call from Thomas. "Margaret," he said, sounding more awake than I felt. "I've gone through the documents you gave me. It's real. It's final. It completely replaces the previous version." I didn't speak right away. I was still processing what it meant to hear that out loud. "I've already filed a formal notice with probate court," he continued. "Ethan won't be happy." "He already isn't," I said flatly. He paused. "Would you like me to inform him, or do you want to do it?" "You do it," I said. "Let it come from someone he can't scream at." "Understood." After we hung up, I stayed seated. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. This was a man I raised. I fed him, bathed him, stayed up with him when he had fevers. Now he wanted me out of his life, out of the house. And for what? For the same money I'd spent decades helping Robert earn? Around noon, someone knocked on the door. I opened it and found Rachel standing on the porch, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. "You handed Thomas something yesterday," she said, skipping any pleasantries. "What was it?" I didn't invite her in. "Robert's last will," I replied. Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You heard me. Funny. Ethan already has the will, the one your husband signed 2 years ago. He signed another one 6 weeks before his stroke. Robert changed everything." Rachel's face went still for a second, like she was trying to decide whether to scream or fake a smile. She chose the second. "That's not possible." "It is, and it's already with the court." She stepped closer. "You're making a mistake, Margaret. This is only going to make things harder for you." "For me?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You and Ethan pushed me out before Robert's body was even in the ground. We're trying to protect the estate." I stared at her. "Protect it from who? Me? The woman who lived in this house for over 40 years? Who took care of Robert after his second heart procedure while you and Ethan were on vacation in Aspen? That's not fair." "No, it's not." She looked past me, into the house. "Ethan said you'd do something like this, that you'd wait until the right moment to make a scene." I didn't blink. "I didn't make a scene. I handed the lawyer a legal document, the same way Robert would have done it." Her lips tightened again. "If you think this is over, it's not. I never said it was." Rachel turned and walked down the steps, heels clicking too fast. She got into her car and slammed the door so hard I felt it through the floorboards. I closed the door and locked it. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Later that afternoon, Ethan called. I didn't want to answer, but I did. "You went behind my back," he said the moment I picked up. "I didn't," I replied. "Your father signed that will while he was still in full control of his mind. You just didn't know about it. He was sick. He was competent," I said. "Thomas confirmed that the notary and witnesses were all verified. It's done." "I don't care if it's done. You think you're going to hold on to everything? You think you're going to keep the house? Dad told me I'd take care of things when he was gone. Maybe that's why he changed the will." He went quiet. I added, "You didn't just take over the funeral, Ethan. You tried to erase me. And now you're angry that you failed. I'm not going to forget this," he said. "I don't expect you to." He hung up. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat at the kitchen table and read the will again. It was still hard to believe Robert had actually written it. He left me the house, the full survivor's pension, and most of the investment account. Ethan would receive a yearly disbursement, controlled by a financial trustee, someone neither of us had met. I remembered the last few months before Robert died. He was quieter, less combative. He didn't apologize for much, but he started doing little things, bringing me tea, asking if I wanted to sit with him to watch the news. Once, while I was folding laundry, he said, "You did more for this house than anyone else ever has." It didn't feel like much at the time, but now it felt like a breadcrumb he left behind. 2 days later, Thomas called again. "We've scheduled a hearing," he said. "Ethan is contesting the will." I expected it. "Let him," I said. "We'll bring everything. Be ready. They're going to get ugly." I didn't say it out loud, but I already knew they were. The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. I spent the night before going through every folder Robert had kept in the filing cabinet near his old desk. His handwriting was still sharp and clean, even in the final weeks. I found utility receipts, bank statements, even old letters he had written to our accountant over the years. I wasn't sure what would matter in court, but I brought it all. I dressed in my navy skirt and cream blouse, the ones I used to wear to church on special holidays. The courtroom wasn't far, just 10 minutes from the house, but I left early. I needed time to breathe before seeing Ethan and Rachel again. When I arrived, Thomas was already there. He stood by the hallway outside the courtroom, holding a thick binder under his arm. "You look prepared," I said. "I am," he answered. "And you?" "I'm not sure how to answer that." He nodded once. "Then let's just get through this." Inside, Ethan and Rachel sat together at the opposite table. Ethan wore the same gray suit he'd worn to the funeral. Rachel was in all black again, like it was still mourning season, but her face didn't look sad. She looked ready to win. She didn't acknowledge me when I entered. Ethan did. He stared at me the whole time I walked to the other side of the room, like he wanted me to flinch. I didn't. The judge came in shortly after, a middle-aged woman with firm eyes and a tight expression. She didn't waste time. "Let's begin," she said. "Petitioner claims the most recent will filed is invalid due to undue influence and mental incompetence of the decedent. Respondent claims the will is legitimate and properly witnessed. I will hear from both sides." Ethan's lawyer, a younger man named Clark, stood first. He had a friendly voice, but I knew better than to be fooled by that. "Your Honor, we are not claiming that Mrs. Lattimore forged the will," he said. "We are simply stating that Mr. Robert Lattimore was not of sound mind when the most recent version was signed. Our concern is that he was influenced by Mrs. Lattimore in his final weeks, and that the changes to the will reflect pressure, not intent." Thomas stood next. "Your Honor, the document was witnessed by 2 neutral parties. It was notarized in accordance with state law. Medical records from that week indicate Robert Lattimore was alert, oriented, and capable of making financial decisions. There is no evidence of coercion, only speculation." The judge looked at both sides. "Will the petitioner be providing any documentation to support their claim of mental decline?" Clark nodded. "We have a statement from Dr. Fulton, who treated Mr. Lattimore 3 weeks before the date of the will." The judge raised an eyebrow. 3 weeks before?" "Yes, Your Honor." "That's not the same as the week he signed the document." Clark hesitated. "We are also submitting testimony from the petitioner, Ethan Lattimore." Ethan stood and walked to the witness seat. He didn't look at me as he passed. He placed his hand on the Bible, gave the oath, and sat down. "Mr. Lattimore," his lawyer began, "can you tell us about your father's condition in the final months of his life?" Ethan leaned forward. He was tired. He forgot things. Sometimes he'd repeat himself in the same conversation. He wasn't himself anymore. "Did he ever mention making changes to his will?" "No," Ethan said quickly. "Not once. And he always told me, always, that I would handle things when he was gone, that I would carry the family forward." "And how did you find out about the updated will?" He looked straight at me then. "She handed it over during the funeral, like it was a weapon," the judge interrupted. "Let's keep emotion out of the room." Thomas stood. "May I cross-examine?" The judge nodded. Thomas walked slowly. "Mr. Lattimore, when was the last time you and your father had a conversation about finances?" Ethan shifted. "A few months before he passed." "Do you recall the content of that conversation?" "He said everything was set up the way it should be." "Did he show you a copy of any will?" "No." "So you assumed?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes." And were you aware that your father visited the notary office 6 weeks before his passing? No. Were you aware he had written a letter to his accountant that same week outlining changes to his beneficiaries? Ethan said nothing. Thomas continued. Do you have any evidence that your mother manipulated him? I don't need evidence, Ethan snapped. I knew my father. That will be all, Thomas said. Ethan sat down, fuming. Rachel whispered something to him, but he didn't respond. Then it was my turn. Thomas asked me to take the stand. I swore in and sat down. My heart was pounding, but my hands stayed still. Mrs. Lattimore, he began, can you tell the court how this will came to your possession? I found it in Robert's private desk drawer after he died, I said. He had placed it in a yellow envelope marked Final 2023. It was under a folder with property tax documents. Did he tell you he updated the will? He didn't, I said, but I knew he was working with his accountant during that time. Did you witness any confusion or signs of memory loss in the weeks before the will was signed? No. He paid bills. He checked our investment account. He reminded me to schedule a dentist appointment. He was sharp. And did you pressure him to change anything in his estate? No, I said firmly. We didn't even talk about the will. Thomas turned to the judge. We submit medical records and the notary's affidavit stating Mr. Lattimore appeared alert, oriented, and in control of his decisions. The judge nodded and asked a few questions herself. I answered as plainly as I could. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth. When it was over, the judge looked through the binder Thomas had prepared. Her eyes moved quickly. She asked for a recess. I stepped outside the courtroom and sat on a bench. I felt hollow. Ethan and Rachel stayed inside. Thomas walked out a few minutes later and sat beside me. You did fine, he said. I didn't come here to win. I came here to stop them from rewriting everything. I know. When the judge returned, she didn't take long. Based on the evidence presented, the court finds no grounds to invalidate the 2023 will. The document is valid, binding, and shall be entered as the official last will and testament of Robert Lattimore. I didn't smile. I didn't move. Ethan lowered his head. Rachel didn't. She stared at me like I had stolen something. The judge continued. Control of the primary residence remains with the respondent, Mrs. Lattimore. All asset distributions will follow the outline of the 2023 will. Hearing adjourned. The gavel came down. Rachel stood up and walked straight out. Ethan followed slowly. He didn't look at me. Thomas shook my hand. It's done. I nodded, but I knew it wasn't. Not yet. Because what comes after losing isn't silence. It's what they do when they realize they can't undo it. And Ethan wasn't the kind of man to let go without trying again. 3 days after the court hearing, I opened the front door to find a letter taped to the glass. No envelope, no return address. Just a folded piece of paper secured with a strip of cheap masking tape. I didn't need to read it to know who it was from. I peeled it off and sat down on the edge of the couch before unfolding it. The handwriting was Ethan's. Sharp, tight, pressed too hard into the page like he was trying to carve his anger into the paper. You think you won, but all you did was ruin everything Dad built. I hope you enjoy sitting in a house you didn't earn, living off money that wasn't meant for you. We'll see how long you can hold on before you realize none of it matters without a family. You've made your choice. Don't expect us to be part of your life again. E. I folded it back up and dropped it into the trash without saying a word. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I hadn't heard from anyone else in the family since the hearing. Not a cousin, not an old friend of Robert's, not even a neighbor. It was as if Ethan and Rachel had drawn a line and everyone else had fallen in behind them. But I still got the house. I still had the documents. And I still had the key Robert had hidden inside the small wooden clock on the mantel, the key to the locked drawer in his office. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't want to know what else he'd kept from me. But after that letter, I needed to see it. I found the drawer and unlocked it. Inside were 2 folders. One marked Final Accounts and another one with no label. I opened the first. More bank documents. He had consolidated everything just weeks before his death. He had moved money from 2 older accounts into one under both our names. I hadn't even noticed. I had never checked the statements back then. Robert handled everything and told me only what he thought I needed to know. But the other folder, the unlabeled one, had something else. Letters, notebooks, some receipts. and at the very bottom, a handwritten letter addressed to me. I hesitated, then unfolded it slowly. Margaret, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I doubt I ever said everything I should have, and I doubt I ever will. But I made mistakes. I let Ethan become someone I didn't recognize. I didn't correct him when I should have. I saw how Rachel talked to you. I should have stepped in. I didn't. You were never weak. You were tired. And I made you tired. This house, this life, wouldn't have existed without you. Not a single thing in it. That's why I changed the will. It was long overdue. If Ethan is angry, it's because I let him believe it would all be his. That's on me. But the truth is, I trusted you to do what was right with it, even if I didn't say it out loud. Robert. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at the words. He hadn't apologized when he was alive, not really. But he knew. He knew what he'd done, what he'd allowed, what he'd stayed silent about. And now Ethan had to live with that too. The next day, Rachel showed up again. This time she didn't knock. She banged on the door, hard, and yelled from the porch. I know you're in there, Margaret. Open the damn door. I opened it. She was holding a thick stack of papers in a plastic folder. She didn't wait for an invitation. I want copies of everything, she said. Bank statements, property tax records, pension distributions. If you're going to steal this family's estate, the least you can do is be transparent. I didn't flinch. It's not stealing when it was left to me. You manipulated him. He wasn't thinking straight. The court disagreed. Rachel shoved the folder into my hands. You think this is over? It's not. We're going to appeal. You can try. She stepped forward again, lowering her voice. You want to be alone, Margaret? Fine. But just remember, when no one visits, when no one calls, when you're sitting in this house by yourself, you made that happen. She turned and walked away without another word. I watched her go, then closed the door and set the folder on the hallway table. I didn't open it. I had no intention of responding to anything in it. If they wanted more documents, they could talk to Thomas. That weekend, I went to the grocery store. I don't know what I expected, but I felt eyes on me as soon as I walked in. A couple in the cereal aisle stopped talking when I passed. The woman who'd cut my hair for years walked right past me without saying hello. Robert had been well known in town. Ethan, too. They'd painted a picture of me as the bitter widow who'd taken advantage of a sick man and torn a family apart. But I knew the truth, and so did the court. I grabbed my groceries and got out of there as fast as I could. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my legs, watching the cars pass. I didn't hear from anyone, not a single person. My phone was silent, but the silence wasn't heavy like before. It was something else now. It was space. Rachel was wrong. I didn't need them to call. I didn't need Ethan's approval. What I needed was to finally live in a house where I didn't have to be quiet to keep the peace. That evening, I cleaned out the last of Robert's things. His suits, his boxes of old paperwork, the boxes of Ethan's childhood toys he never took with him. I packed them all into the back room. I found a small photo album tucked in the back of a drawer. Inside were pictures of Ethan as a boy. One stood out. It was of me holding him when he was maybe 4, in front of the old garden shed, dirt on his shoes and jelly on his face. I looked tired, but I was smiling. I closed the album and put it in a drawer in my bedroom. Maybe one day I'd look at it again, but not tonight. Tonight, I needed rest. Because whatever Ethan planned next, I knew it wouldn't be the end of it. The letter from the county office arrived 5 days later. It was folded neatly, sealed in a government envelope, and stamped with the Property Tax Division logo. I opened it while standing at the kitchen counter, coffee still hot in my hand. According to the notice, someone had filed a formal request for a property value reassessment on the house. My house. It didn't take me long to figure out who. I called Thomas immediately. They want the house reassessed? He repeated, already sounding annoyed. That's Ethan. That's what I thought. He let out a long breath. They're trying to push your taxes up. If the county reassesses the value high enough, they'll raise your annual property taxes and make it harder for you to keep the house. They think I'll sell, I said. They're hoping for it. I didn't respond right away. I was looking around the kitchen at the new tile Robert and I had installed 3 years ago. At the window Ethan once broke with a baseball. At the pantry where I used to hide his Halloween candy so he wouldn't eat it all in 2 days. I'm not going anywhere, I said quietly. Then we'll fight it, Thomas replied. Send me the notice. I'll respond. I hung up and scanned the document, emailed it over, and then sat in silence again. This was what I had been expecting. Retaliation without confrontation. Ethan knew he couldn't change the will, but he wasn't done making my life harder. 2 days later, someone left a voicemail pretending to be from a financial service company, claiming they were calling about your reverse mortgage application. I hadn't filed any such thing. When I called the number back, it was disconnected. I checked my credit report. No activity, no new accounts. Another scare tactic. Then came the gossip. It started small. At the pharmacy, the cashier asked if I was doing okay in a tone that didn't sound sincere. Then, one of the women from Robert's old Rotary Club called to check in and let it slip that some people had heard. I was planning to liquidate Robert's retirement to travel through Europe. I hadn't even renewed my passport in over a decade. Ethan was talking. Rachel, too. They were trying to control the story. If they couldn't undo what happened in court, they'd poison everything else around it. One morning, I caught Rachel parked across the street. She didn't get out of the car. She just sat there in the driver's seat, pretending to scroll through her phone. I stood at the front window and watched her for a while. I wasn't hiding. Eventually, she drove off. That afternoon, Thomas called again. I just got an email from a reporter, he said. Local paper. Says he received an anonymous tip that you manipulated your husband's will and coerced him during hospice care. Robert wasn't in hospice, I said. I know, but they're trying to bait a story. What do I do? Nothing, he said. I'll handle it, but you need to know they're trying to exhaust you. It was working. A little. I stopped going to the grocery store and had everything delivered. I stayed off social media. Not that I used it much to begin with. I noticed fewer people waving when they walked their dogs by my house. A few crossed the street entirely. I didn't cry, but I felt smaller. Not because I regretted anything, but because it hurt to watch a life shrink like that. Then something happened I didn't expect. A letter came in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but it was mailed through the regular post. The handwriting was neat, but unfamiliar. Inside was a short note. Mrs. Lattimore, I was the notary who witnessed your husband's signature. I remember him clearly. He was lucid, polite, and very clear about what he wanted. I don't know what's going on now, but if you need someone to verify that day, I will. Stephanie M. I stared at the note for a long time. I didn't even realize how much I needed it until I read it. Just one stranger, one person willing to say, I saw what you saw. You're not imagining things. I called Thomas and read it to him. That's strong, he said. We may not even need her, but I'm glad she stepped forward. The next day, I went to the bank. The same bank Robert used for years. I wanted to make sure no one had been poking around. The manager, Mr. Lowell, remembered me from the times I came in with Robert. He invited me into his office, closed the door, and said something that made my stomach drop. Someone called here last week asking for verification on one of Robert's old business accounts. They didn't have legal authority, so we shut it down immediately. Was it Ethan? I asked. We couldn't confirm, he said, but the phone number they used had been disconnected by the time we called back. It was another move. They were trying to find something, anything they could use. A discrepancy, a missing form, anything they could twist. Mr. Lowell reassured me that all access had been blocked. Only my name remained on the active accounts. I thanked him and left the bank. As I stepped outside, I saw Ethan's car parked at the far end of the lot. He wasn't looking at me. He was just sitting there, waiting. I didn't give him the satisfaction of walking toward him. I got in my car and left. Back home, I made a decision. I called Thomas and told him I wanted to move the house into a protective trust. I wanted it locked down, shielded from legal harassment. If they were going to keep circling me, I needed more than just defense. I needed a wall. He agreed. We began the paperwork. That night, I took out the old photo album again. Not the one with Ethan's childhood pictures, but the other one, the one with the house. Photos of the kitchen before we remodeled it. The backyard when it still had the swing set Robert built. Me standing in the living room, holding a tray of lemonade during one of Robert's staff dinners. This was my house. Not just because of the papers, but because of the life lived inside it. I wasn't going to hand it over to people who only cared about ownership and image, and I certainly wasn't going to let them tear me down to take it. If Ethan wanted to keep pushing, I'd be ready. He thought he could wear me out, but I'd lived through worse than him. The trust was finalized 3 weeks later. Thomas walked me through every page, every clause. The house was now protected. Untouchable. No court filing, no false claim, no reassessment could force me out. Everything was clear and airtight. Once it was done, I made copies of the documents and stored one in my bedroom, one in a safe deposit box, and one with Thomas. When I got home that afternoon, I noticed something different. The front gate was open. It wasn't just open, it had been kicked in. The latch was bent backward and the wood had fresh splinters. I didn't call the police right away. I wanted to check the house first. The front door was still locked. The windows were intact. But in the backyard, the shed had been broken into. Inside, some boxes were torn open. Old gardening tools were thrown around. My grandfather's fishing rods were snapped in two. There was no theft, just damage. I called Thomas first. "They're escalating," he said. "It's desperation. Should I report it?" "Yes," he said. "You don't need to let this slide." So I did. The officer who showed up was polite but hesitant. He asked if I had enemies. I said I didn't, but that I had a son named Ethan. He wrote it down without asking more. 2 days later, Ethan called. I didn't answer. Then Rachel called. I ignored her too. Then came the third call. Unknown number. I answered. A young woman's voice said, "Hi, is this Margaret Lattimore?" "Yes, my name is Erica. I'm calling on behalf of a client, Rachel Lattimore. She'd like to formally request a mediation." "Mediation?" "She wishes to avoid further legal complications and would like to discuss a potential resolution regarding the estate, as well as the reputational matters that have developed since the court ruling." I didn't say anything. "She's willing to meet in a neutral location, or if preferred, to open communications through her legal representative." I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Tell her the answer is no." The woman tried to respond, but I had already ended the call. They were folding. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. No waking up at 3 a.m. to stare at the ceiling. No anxiety twisting in my stomach. Just quiet. A week later, I opened the mailbox and found a card. It was from Sarah, the daughter of Robert's former coworker. We hadn't spoken in years. She wrote, "Margaret, I just wanted to say I saw what you went through. People talk, but not everyone believes what they hear. You were always kind to my dad. My mom always said Robert didn't deserve you. I hope you're doing okay. If you ever want to grab coffee, I'm here. Sarah." I sat on the porch with the card in my hand for a long time. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. I called her 2 days later. We met for coffee the next morning. She didn't ask anything. We talked about her work, her kids, the new grocery store opening across town. We didn't mention Ethan or Rachel. That afternoon, I returned home to find an envelope taped to my door. Again, this one was thinner, smaller. It looked handwritten. I opened it on the porch. "Margaret, I've made a mess of everything. Rachel told me to let it go, but I didn't. I pushed. I lied. I tried to take something that wasn't mine. I thought I was protecting Dad's legacy, but the truth is, I was protecting my ego. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know. I see it now. All of it. Ethan." There was no return address, no phone number. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with Robert's last note. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things don't need answers. They just need to be over. Over the next few months, I started making small changes to the house. I took down the heavy drapes Rachel had installed and brought back the floral curtains I'd stored away. I painted the guest room a pale yellow. I had the front porch repaired and planted fresh hydrangeas along the walkway. For the first time, the house felt like mine. Not shared, not negotiated, not something I was holding on to out of duty. Just mine. I saw Thomas one more time to sign the last of the estate documents. He asked if I wanted to pursue legal action for the harassment, the shed break-in, the false credit inquiries. I told him no. I was done giving Ethan and Rachel space in my head. Let them sit with what they lost. One day, while grocery shopping, I ran into Linda, one of the few women in town who hadn't avoided me entirely. She asked if I'd like to come by for a book club meeting. I said yes. It was quiet at first. Some people watched me, unsure of what to say. But no one said anything cruel. And when I mentioned a book I liked, someone nodded in agreement. By the end of the evening, I had a recipe for lemon bars and a new phone number saved. A few weeks later, I hosted them at my house. I baked the lemon bars, set out fresh tea, opened the windows. Rachel never showed her face again. Neither did Ethan. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't need to. The silence was louder than anything they could have said, and I liked it that way. On the anniversary of Robert's death, I walked through the house slowly, room by room. I paused in front of the office door, now cleared of all his files and folders. I thought I'd feel grief. I didn't. I felt relief. This house had been a battlefield. Now it was a home. One I built, one I protected, one I kept. Not because Robert gave it to me, but because I chose not to give it away. I stood at the kitchen sink, watching the hydrangeas sway slightly in the breeze outside the window. For the first time in decades, no one was behind me waiting for a plate. No one was sighing at the way I folded the napkins. No one was telling me I should be grateful for what little I had. I wasn't alone. I was free, and I had finally decided to live like it.